the Yankees have a really big series coming up against the Boston Red Sox. And here with me to talk about the Boston Red Sox, a good friend of mine who I have collaborated with in the stream, Alec Walt. How's it going?
I'm doing well, man. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, good to have you. This is going to be a really interesting week. And, the Yankees and the Red Sox have both been slumping a little bit, but I think it'll be really interesting to see who takes over and who gets a bit of a second place advantage here. What are your overall thoughts going into the series so far?
Yeah, about to say interesting timing for these two teams to face off, because obviously one of the key storylines this year in the American League East was how big of a surprise the Red Sox have been. They won today. They're 33-23, and if you were to tell me at the beginning of the season that that'd be their record about a third of the way through the season, I'd tell you you're crazy. I think the Red Sox have definitely exceeded my expectations. They played some pretty solid baseball. Their pitching's been much better than I expected, and they have someone in the back of the bullpen like Matt Barnes, who's been pretty productive in his role back there, which has definitely made it a lot easier for the rest of the guys in the pen. But of course, we haven't played the Yankees yet this season. We got the Yankees coming up this weekend, and the Red Sox are playing some of their worst baseball heading into this series. They just lost 3 out of 4 against Houston. They did just win the game today, so the Red Sox this year have been a team that's had one of the best offenses in baseball. Offense has been down across the league. The Red Sox have had one of the most consistent, and they scored 2, 1, 1, and then finally today 5 runs against the Astros. That's not going to get it done no matter who you play. So, right. The Red Sox, again, they've been a nice surprise, but the Yankees are playing them in their first series at a pretty solid time because that deadly offense is not swinging the bat well right now.
Yeah, no, and one of the big reasons that I've noticed that the Red Sox have been struggling, I was taking a look at some of your guys' numbers. I didn't realize how much your guy Kiki Hernandez is struggling in the leadoff spot.
Right now, he's doing awful. He came back from an injury, and he hasn't been able to hit the baseball.
Are you ready for these numbers that I'm about to give you?
I'm worried it's worse than the numbers I saw the other day. So go ahead. It's not
234 batting average and an OBP of 290.
Yeah,
that's not leadoff hitter like numbers. So
it hasn't he been? I think in his last 20 or 25 at bats, he has 1 hit maybe. He has not been doing anything there in the leadoff spot.
Yeah, no. So what I was going to ask you regarding that, would you say it's time to end the Kike Hernandez leadoff experiment? And if so, who do you replace him with?
So that's the main question is who do you replace him with? And I think they eventually have to because he simply isn't getting the job done. Now, outside of him, it's not just him who's not getting the job done. Right. Bogaerts has been playing pretty awful. He had a solid day today. Rafael Devers simply can't hit a fastball. It seemed like every pitch that the Houston Astros threw to him was one of those, so he's in a little bit of a slump. That was one of the main questions going into the season is who's going to be the leadoff guy. Now, a lot of people projected it would be Alex Verdugo. I really wasn't too big of a fan of that. One thing I've liked about Kike is the fact that he can play in that center field spot and take some of the leadoff pressure. Verdugo's a better in the corner outfield spot, hitting about a 2 in the lineup where he is. Now, if you were to replace him, that's a great question because I don't really know. Maybe you move Verdugo up a spot. I'm looking at their roster right now. You're not moving Bogaerts. You're obviously not moving Devers and JD. Renfroe is way too inconsistent. Santana had a good first weekend and has really fallen off. Marwin doesn't play enough. Neither does Arroyo. You're not going to lead off a catcher. Who are you going to lead off?
Yeah, it's not a good situation. And by the way, we've got a comment here for you. Our buddy Tom from, of course, Review and Preview.
Oh, yeah. What's up, Tom?
Walt? JD Martinez is every fantasy owner's dream. Yeah, JD, I think he's been swinging the bat pretty well.
Oh, yeah. Because he has the outfield. Well, it depends on what type of league you're in.
Yeah.
I'm assuming Tom's in a league that he's allowed to play in the outfield.
Right.
But yeah, man, they've allowed Video back in the dugouts. He had that full off season, and JD's swinging the bat well, and the lineup most of the season has been reflective of that. JD's been an animal this year. It's awesome to see him in the DH spot.
Yeah, I like the approach that JD Martinez takes, and as I kind of
hitter every time.
Yeah, no, I wish a few other sluggers on my team took the approach of where they could watch video and study their swings rather than swing for the fences every time. But that's a rant I've probably done ad nauseum about the Yankees, and I'll probably do for another day. But Another thing I got to ask. So you mentioned Xander Bogaerts. I know you said he's been struggling. However, in my personal opinion, I actually think he's one of the more criminally underrated shortstops in baseball. Like,
it's 100% right.
I know you might be surprised hearing this from a Yankee fan, but you look at his averages, like for the past 5 years, he's consistently at or near 300. Mm-hmm. He has a few silver sluggers. He's got a few all-star appearances. And of course, he's got one, and as this pains me to admit this, but he's got one thing that a lot of other shortstops don't have right now. That's one of those World Series shiny rings, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at the shortstop position in Major League Baseball, from a talent depth perspective, it's one of the best in the league. I mean, you got Tatis, Story, Lindor, Correa, Tim Anderson, Xander Bogaerts. I mean, some of the best players in this league play that position. And when you have so many players like that at the spot, you almost forget Xander Bogaerts is there. This is crazy. Entering the month of June, among shortstops all across Major League Baseball, Bogaerts is first in batting average, first in OPS, second in hits, fourth in RBIs, and fifth in home runs.
Wow. That's unreal. And again, I can't believe this guy doesn't really get talked about enough. And it's really surprising me considering he plays in Boston. You would think that being in a big market like that city, you'd hear more talk like, oh, Xander is among the biggest shortstops in the league or whatnot.
But I feel like in Boston, everyone already knows that. But this also is a bigger issue in the fact that baseball does a very bad job marketing its players. I mean, if you walked around Boston right now and you mentioned Xander Bogaerts' name, everyone is going to know who you're talking about.
Sure.
If you go to Phoenix, it may be a different story, which is an issue. I 100% agree with you. But, yeah, this dude's a stud. And I feel like every single season, like I mentioned, whenever you talk about the top shortstops, you'll, oh, yeah, I forgot. Yeah, Bogaerts, he's pretty good too. And, you don't get that depth at every position across baseball. You look at second base, it drops off significantly. Shortstop's a loaded position in major leagues, and I think Xander absolutely needs to have his name mentioned above the best.
Absolutely. And by the way, we've got a comment from my aunt who lives in Brooklyn, Massachusetts. You'll love this.
Hey, go Red Sox.
Next guy I want to talk about, Alex Verdugo. I think he's been very good so far. I would say that he has definitely lessened the blow of losing some of your old outfielders, particularly a guy by the name of Marcus Lynn Betts, who you obviously know as Mookie. But would you say that he has a long-term future with the team? I mean, this is a guy whose swing is totally fit for Fenway.
Absolutely. And, he was one of the main centerpieces in that trade, and he's come to Boston, and he hasn't, normally when you're the main piece of a deal with someone that popular, not even outside the city of Boston, you're always looked at as the guy that was traded for the star. He's come to Boston. He's accepted being a Red Sox. You remember when in his initial interviews, he was talking about how he couldn't wait to meet Big Papi. He's, done a good job communicating with the fans. He's a hard worker. He's put some clutch hits. He does a lot of things well that Red Sox fans really like. He's intense. He's tough. Mm-hmm. He plays better defender than I actually thought he'd be. Now, obviously, it sucks to lose Betts. No one wants to see a superstar player go out the way he did, and there was a lot of financial mismanagement on the Red Sox part that led to them having to make a trade. But I think Alex Verdugo absolutely has a high ceiling playing in what we've seen him in both corner outfield spots this season. I think he should stay in right, but for a very long time, and he's fit in so well. I mean, you're 100% right when it comes to his swing. I watch him bat, and his swing is getting better, and it makes so much sense for him to play in this ballpark. It's I wouldn't say it was he's a great addition, knowing that obviously, the situation with trading for Mookie Betts, but I like watching Verdugo play a lot, and he doesn't have that. I don't watch him play saying that's who was traded for Mookie Betts. I say this is a guy that can play in right field for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. And one of the other good things about having Alex Verdugo is it takes a little bit of the pressure off some of your big name minor league star outfielders that are down like the shuttle away in is it Worcester? I think
it's now in Worcester. Yeah, the Woo Sox.
I was gonna say I know it used to be Pawtucket, but I think they just recently changed to Worcester. But anyways, what I was saying was you got a guy like Jared Duran who's I think he's the big name in your system now. So having
he's one of a couple guys that are on the way.
So yeah, him producing, I think, takes a lot of pressure off of him, and they don't have to rush him to the major leagues in case obviously one of your guys struggles or gets into a slump. But Speaking of Red Sox outfielders, like I think there's another guy I got to talk about because he's been a little bit polarizing. I think Bobby Dalbec's the guy's name. I know he had a bit of a promising stretch as of late, but we also know he's had a bit of a rough patch. And again, given the prospects that are viewed in the system, such as Jeter, Downs, and Duran, is this a guy who you think is going to be like trade bait in the near future, or do you think somehow he still finds a way on the roster?
Well, the thing with Dalbec is his spot is because he has been mainly he's a corner infielder,
right?
So he has Chavis breathing down his neck. Plus, Marwin has the ability to do it. And Tristan Cassius, who's their top first base prospect, is probably going to be in Boston in the next couple of years. I mean, his thing is he's a really streaky hitter. Teams are abusing him with the fastball. Obviously, we're seeing a lot of players struggle with the adjustment of seeing 97 consistently. I mean, the way pitchers are throwing right now is absolutely unbelievable. It took him about a month or so to really get his home run swing down. Trade bait wise, when you look at the depth in the Red Sox system, it's not that great. So when you look at Tristan Cassius, a top 100 prospect, he is expected to possibly be the potential first baseman of the future. If he is, and within 2 or 3 years, that's a decision the organization wants to go, I think Dalbec absolutely is trade bait. Now, he has a really powerful swing. Obviously, that leads to a lot of inconsistencies, but he's absolutely a starting level first baseman around the league. I think Cassius has a chance to be a little bit better because I think his raw power is just there. I think he has the chance to be an extremely productive offensive first baseman, but give it 2 years. If we're still looking to improve the pitching and Cassius is on the way out the door, I think flipping Dalbec for an arm makes a ton of sense. And you mentioned Duran. I cannot wait to see him. And if PK keeps struggling, they maybe have to consider calling him up a little bit earlier than expected. Yeah,
I don't know if him being called up would be a look-see so much as they want him to help you out in the lineup C, I guess, so to speak. And we have another comment, by the way. My guy, Andrew Hopper, who I had last week.
Hey, what's up, Andrew?
How's it going, Andrew? Good to see you. Thanks for checking in. Folks, remember, if you want to keep interacting with us, you want to talk some Yankees, Red Sox with us, and even more baseball news that has to come, please do not hesitate to comment down below in the comments section. But anyways, let's move on to the pitching. So Nick Pivetta has been a key member of the pitching staff. Do you think that the change of scenery from him going to Fenway really affected him? And to what extent did it help? Like if it helped at all?
Oh, it was huge because you look at Philadelphia the last couple of years, it's been terrible for pitchers. I mean, I feel like they've added half the league and a lot of it really has struggled to adjust. Now, obviously the top two with their rotations, very productive. I think their depth has been very shaky the last couple of years, but I think he's absolutely a product of a new situation. He was always a hard thrower, but was never really used very well in Philadelphia. He comes to a new team, Alex Cora, now as the manager, Chaim Bloom, who does a great job scouting pitchers from his days when he was with the Tampa Bay Rays. And, obviously Pivetta was a guy for a couple of years in Philadelphia. You said he just needs to find his way out. I mean, it wasn't working well. He had a tough time pitching in that ballpark. I mean, I don't even know what the pitching program is there in Philly when he was there. Because he was there for the end of Kapler, plus they changed their GM. There was a lot of nonsense going on in Philadelphia, which is definitely not good for a pitcher. So, he's a hard-throwing kid. He also has had unbelievable run support this year outside of yesterday. He's definitely been a product of quality run support. I think he has 6 wins this year already, which is pretty crazy. So, Philly was a bad situation. Boston right now is looking like a pretty solid situation. I really still don't see him as a pitcher that's going to be higher than maybe third or fourth in this rotation. But for when you had to get rid of a couple bullpen pieces last year, they go to Philly, they struggle. He sits for majority of the season, has a full-time role this year. It's definitely been a good situation there for Pivetta. And I like what I'm seeing because going into the season, I thought the Red Sox were going to have one of the worst rotations in baseball. And Erod has not been very good, and they still have one of the more surprising rotations in baseball. And that's because of guys like Pivetta, Perez, Eovaldi, who pitched very well this year. So I give Pivetta a lot of credit, Chaim Bloom a lot of credit for bringing him in because, he needed that new situation. He's found it in Boston, and he's been very successful to start the season.
Yeah, definitely. And let me pull up some of the numbers for him this year. So I see that he's 6-1, and his ERA is 3.77, which, as you know, is a little bit high. But I think, like you said, you're absolutely right about the run support. It definitely has helped him this year, and I would agree that a change of scenery probably has been for the best. And 68 strikeouts and a 1.223 WHIP. That's That's not bad at all.
Yeah, no, he's been very solid. I mean, he's gotten into games. I mean, he's gotten to the 6th and 7th a couple games, which is always great for a bullpen. I think that's been better than I expected, but I still don't think is fully ready to make any deep runs if that's what they plan on doing this year. I think they do need to add a couple more pieces back there if they're going to want to do something. But I give a lot of credit to Heim because I was not a huge fan of this trade, but Pivetta is making the Phillies look pretty stupid.
So I'm glad you brought up Chaim Bloom because it seems to me that he's made a lot of good moves that have helped turn around the Red Sox. Now, obviously, you have the dud that was the Andrew Benintendi trade. I think that they really fell flat there. And
it depends what they get from the players to be named later, but
true. I mean, but having Fred in the minor leagues doesn't help.
Bad. He's so bad. He was good for about the first week of the season, and then he went on a little bit of a skid, and he had no idea how to get out of it.
And let me answer Tom's second question. He says, what's the deal with Nick Pivetta, former NL East arm with a shaky ERA? Is he benefiting from Boston's offensive success? Yeah, I think as we talked about
when you go out there when it's 3-0, 4-0, 4-1, 5-1.
Yeah, as we kind of alluded to earlier, I would agree with Alec on that. I think definitely it helps pitching for an offensive. I guess you could say it's an offensive juggernaut because you got a few guys who are pretty high in the batting average, and you have Devers and Bogaerts who are like up there in the RBI category. So I think that definitely can help. But I also think having good stuff and being in a change of scenery can help because, as we mentioned, like you alluded to, you were absolutely right about the Phillies. They were in an absolute mess. Like it says something when they've had to change managers multiple times over the past few years, and when they're on like their second or third GM within the past 5 years.
Yeah,
not great.
Yeah, Klentak to Dombrowski. I can't remember who the other one was, but
Dombrowski. You had Klentak, and I think Andy McPhail was the president at the time.
I think you're right. So it wasn't great. I mean, I'm not really sold on Philly. I know we're kind of focused more on the Red Sox and the Yankees, but
no, me neither. I don't really trust them either, but also because they've thrown around a lot of money on hitters, and look at how their bullpen is.
But if Heim can keep making these types of moves, I mean, that he has to. I mean, the organization from a pitching perspective still isn't great. I mean, a lot of it has to rely on the health of Chris Sale and Eduardo Rodriguez, especially with those 4 depth pitchers pitching better than I expected. If those two can come back and Eduardo's already back, but hasn't been pitching well. Sale, we're still waiting to hear what comes back from, but he gave up very little for a guy that just needed a new situation, and now he's pitching very well. I think that also says a lot about Alex Cora. I think the return of Cora has been huge for this team. This was a team that didn't look forward to going to work, it almost seemed like, on a daily basis. When you play professional baseball and you have games every single day, that matters. And when you have JD hitting well, Xander and Raphael complementing that well, Verdugo taking that step forward, your depth pitcher stepping up, I think a lot of it has to do with Cora back on the bench, and he's been awesome since he returned from his suspension.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Like, don't get me wrong, I can go on, say stuff about what Cora did with Houston and whatnot, but at the same time, and I thought this like in 2018 when he came there, like, I think he was good for them. Like, if you remember 2018, he created a whole different culture. Like, he had a more relaxed atmosphere, whereas I think your previous guy, Farrell, was kind of a little too uptight and a bit of a hard guy to deal with. So
I can't stand John Farrell.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I know a lot of you guys didn't like John Farrell, but yeah, Cora changed the atmosphere. It seemed much loose, and it also helps that he's bilingual. Like, when you have a lot of guys who speak Spanish too, like, that helps more than people realize, because it shows you that he's a good communicator and that he can really get along well with his players. And yeah, I really, from what I understand, I think Cora gives a really good vibe for the Red Sox, even though obviously as a Yankee fan, I'm personally not too big a fan considering what he was doing in Houston and what he may or may not have doing with the Red Sox. But we're not going to talk about that. I think he's done a good job as their manager. Yeah. I think re-signing him back, especially after, like, you were in the midst of a rebuild after that awful 2020, which we obviously knew the Red Sox weren't even trying that year. Like, getting him back, I think, was important because I think they really did need a bit of the culture change, so to speak. But, yeah, I'm glad you brought up Chaim Bloom, too, because as a Yankee fan, I've seen him work with two of my division rivals. You look at the Tampa Bay Rays. He is the reason why I almost always say never make a trade with Tampa Bay, because they always seem to like sneak up and make a good deal. And I'm pretty sure this is the same guy who pretty much absolutely train robbed the Pittsburgh Pirates by taking Austin Meadows and Glass now.
Probably.
Giving them Chris
I don't know
Archer
what his specific role was that year. It's kind of like 5 years ago. Something like that. It was like 4 or 5 years ago. But yeah, he was
I think, July 2018.
Yeah. Oh, wow. I guess only 3 years.
July 2018.
Yeah, he was with the Rays there. I don't know what his specific role is and how he was involved in the scouting of those two players. I mean, if you can, I think it's more convincing them to say yes than scouting at that point when you're getting Meadows and Glass now. But my God, I would love to see a couple of those here in Boston. I don't know what exactly that move is, because the Red Sox from financially are way different than the Rays. They can afford. Right. I mean, they're not going to do those types of move on a yearly basis, but I mean, Pavetta's not nearly as good, but you know, he took a few guys that I don't even think are on the Phillies anymore and found a starting caliber pitcher, and a couple more deals like those they're going to need, because again, I still don't think their pitching's the best, even though they've been much better than I expected this season.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you know, you look at the 2020 Rays lineup. Now, obviously, we know he was with the Red Sox in 2020, but that team that made it to the World Series, we could say what you want about how it happened in a like 60-something game season, how it was shortened due to a pandemic. But the fact of the matter is the Rays still got to the World Series, and they still had a lot of good players to get there. And it has his fingerprints. So that's no small feat, especially when you consider the fact that the Tampa Bay Rays are a small market organization. But I have to say, though, speaking of the Rays, like, we know that they're in first place right now. Let me pull up the standings right now. They are 2 games up on the Red Sox, 1 in the loss column. So you look at the Rays' success. Are you surprised that they're this good, or are you just thinking it's typical Tampa?
I'm not surprised at all. Now, I liked the return they got in the Snell trade. I didn't love the idea of them making this move. Right. I mean, Snell hasn't been the best. I think Patino has the chance to be an absolute stud, but no, I mean, when you looked at their team, a good majority of it was returning. Plus, when you looked at their farm system and saw guys like Shane McClanahan on the rise, plus adding Patino in this trade, you know, they had a lot of depth. They signed a lot of veterans who have been extremely productive in Rich Hill and Michael Wacha. And none of this should really surprise me, because the Rays have some formula, then they make it work pretty much every single season. I never, count out Kevin Cash. I mean, he's one of the best managers in Major League Baseball. And it doesn't surprise me at all. They had a solid lineup. They have a very solid coaching staff. Yes, they had to go through some changes pitching-wise, but pitching's where they specialize, and they find that next kid to come up in the organization and be productive. They know how to manage those bullpen games, having relievers come in for 3 or 4 innings, middle relief situations. They know how to do it all. They're the Rays. They're extremely smart. So, I mean, it's crazy to think that they're able to be this productive on a consistent basis without spending very much money, but you got to give them a lot of credit. While that front office and that coaching staff's been together, they've been pretty consistent and solid every single year.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I think this could probably be sustained over the course of the season. I don't think they're going away anytime soon, personally. However, there's really one other team in this division that scares me, and that's Toronto Blue Jays. Now, their pitching staff might be a little iffy, but when you look at that lineup, Bo Bichette, Vlad Guerrero is the American League leader in batting average. I think he's around 330 something.
Yeah, he's up there.
337. And I believe he's tied with Ronald Acuna for the most home runs. That's still a pretty lethal team. Like, I wouldn't count them out either. So
and wait till they get Springer back.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they're going to be absolutely lethal. I think it's really going to be interesting to see how the division comes down. It's going to be a 4-team race, obviously, but obviously the main reason I have you here for this week is it's another chapter of the Yankees Red Sox series. And as I said, both of them were kind of in a little bit of a slump coming into this series. Like the Red Sox, I know they salvaged the series in Houston by avoiding the sweep today, but we talked about the offense and how cold it's been getting. What are your overall expectations coming into this big series with the Yankees? Do you think that it could really turn the corner and the Red Sox could have a chance to leapfrog the Rays?
I don't think either team sweeps. I think this will be a competitive series. I don't think this will be one of those, series. I mean, I think, the Yankees looked forward to that Houston series. And I thought after that, they really turned a corner. I don't really see that going into this weekend. And if I'm not mistaken, you guys don't have Cole pitching. So I expect a couple games where the ball will fly out of the ballpark.
I was going to say he got rocked. He got bombed today by the Rays.
Today, So, I mean, I think it's weird that we're playing this late, but my expectations are, if the Red Sox keep this offense, what they're doing offensively, and they score 1 run or 2 runs against the Yankees are going to sweep them. If the Red Sox got to swing the bat, they're a team that has an identity offensively. Nathan Eovaldi, Eduardo Rodriguez, Richard. Okay, that's actually not a bad 3 starting pitchers going into this, except for the fact that Erod hasn't been pitching that great. I think Eovaldi and Richards have been very solid. But for the Red Sox, I mean, I expect that their starting pitching will be okay. Their starting pitching's been okay all year. Mm-hmm. If they hit the baseball, they'll win. If they don't, they won't. And I think this series, I think both teams will definitely get a win.
Yeah.
I think the Red Sox are going to lose the Erod game because Erod just is not pitching very well. But again, neither team's really playing that outstanding. I think this series means a little bit more than I was fully expecting because, Red Sox, I weren't thinking were going to be this good. The Yankees thought were going to be better, and the Red Sox are better than I thought. Yankees are worse than I thought, and they're a couple games into the season. But no, I think it'll be a good series. I don't think it'll be a blowout in either way, but Eovaldi, Rodriguez, Rich is a pretty solid trio. But if they don't hit and Erod pitches like he's throwing a bunch of softballs, don't expect to leave Yankee Stadium, with a couple victories.
So let me give you the pitching matchups for the series. So tomorrow night we've got Mike. I believe we have Michael King pitching for the Yankees. I'm not sure whether he's going to actually be starting this or whether they're doing an opener. I don't know how I feel about that, so I'm a little nervous. And not to mention Nathan Eovaldi. I know he's kind of had an up and down career. I know he dominated us in 2018, but he's a guy that has filthy stuff. And I'm going to be honest with you. This is a guy who, when the Yankees let him go, I was a little confused as to why, because I know he may have had the ERA that was in like the high 3s or early 4s, but he was still a guy who had nasty stuff. And when he goes and whenever he's going up against the Yankees, I get a little nervous for that because he's pitched for the Yankees before, and the way they let him go and for him to go to the Red Sox, that gives an athlete an extra motivation. So I'm really not sure what to expect for the first game. However, when we get to Saturday, I believe that is the Erod game. Let me just make sure. It is. Yes, that is the Erod game. Erod against Jamison Taillon. Well, actually, you might have a chance because Jamison Taillon's 1-4 with a 5.10 ERA.
I was say I don't think either starter's going that far.
No, I think that's going to be a very high-scoring game. And then you got Sunday night. Obviously, they're going to make the ESPN game of the week because why not? It's Yankees Red Sox. You got Domingo Germán against Garrett Richards. I'm really not 100% sure what to expect. If I'm going to do a little bit of prediction, I'm going to say the Yankees win this series 2 out of 3, but I'm not going to say that with 100% certainty because if I'm being completely honest with you, the Yankees, as I ranted against Detroit, forget the fact they scored 5 runs. They did not look fundamentally sound this week at all. And there are only a few hitters in the lineup that you can really rely on. And while DJ LeMahieu's been in a slump, I'm not going to fault him entirely because when you look at everybody else, it's hard to really pin it on one guy. But the fact of the matter is he's only had 3 hits in the month of May. 2 of them were solo home runs and a blowout loss to the Nationals. So make of that what you will. Gio Urshela has probably been the one guy that's been consistent. Aaron Judge, when healthy, is still dangerous. But other than that, it's not a lineup that I really trust to score runs. And remember, they went through a stretch where they scored where they had a lot of games where they scored 2 runs or less. That's pretty bad. So
yeah,
I think if anything, that's where you should feel a little bit of hope for the Yankees. And not to mention, there have been games where they made a lot of errors. They had the 3rd game against Detroit where they made 3 errors, 3 of them in the field. Although, even though this technically wasn't a fielding error, I'm still going to throw the base running blunder by Gary Sanchez in there because I'm sorry, when you're trying to advance to second with 2 outs after getting an RBI hit, there is no excuses. Can't do that. And don't even get me started on Gary Sanchez. That's a rant for another day. He's a guy that really shouldn't be starting anymore.
Yeah, I'm surprised he's still a Yankee. I mean, at this point, I feel like no matter what trade you make, you're probably going to lose it because I don't think his trade value is too high, and I think he's going to be a guy that once he finds a new situation, he's definitely going to do better from it. But at this point, it's very clear the Yankees pitchers don't enjoy throwing to him. He's pretty lazy when it comes to blocking baseballs, and he's inconsistent at the plate. You know, those are all signs that you should probably move on from the catcher. And I think there's a lot of teams that would have interest in him. I mean, if I'm Milwaukee, my offense is so awful. You could probably put him behind the plate, improve the middle of the order. I mean, we don't really need – I know you don't want to talk too much Gary Sanchez, but I think the Yankees should eventually move on from him because it's the same story every single year. And I think if Cole wants him out, you paid him at that mega deal, you want to make sure you have the catcher he likes. I know he does have his personal catcher, but I think that just makes matters worse for Gary Sanchez.
When it averages out the same for the past 4 years, I think that's telling me that he might not be the answer at catcher.
A lot of at-bats there. A lot of games there.
That tells me all I need to know. And like I said, it's not just him. There have been other base running blunders that the Yankees have had. Like I talked about how in one of the Rays games that they won, you had Gio Urshela trying to take third on a wild pitch, and the ball didn't even bounce far enough to where he should have gone third. Gets thrown out easily, and then a few batters later, Gleyber Torres gets picked off. And even though that doesn't necessarily count as a base running play, fact of the matter is the Yankees made 28 outs while running the bases.
You were talking about that before I came. But here's the thing with the New York Yankees. One, that's been an issue for you guys for the last couple years. I feel like when you guys have made additions, when you guys have promoted, a lot of them have been that high power, low contact, high strikeout type of player. And, a lot of that means you aren't the best at base running. Like when you have a lineup with Stanton, Judge, Torres isn't bad, Andujar, Voit, guys like that, a lot of them don't lead to quality base runners. You guys went into this offseason needing to improve your base running, your contact, things like that. And I feel like this has been a need for a while, but I feel like you guys have refused to address it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I've been saying it every year. They're such a big home run or bust team. It's been their downfall every single year. Trust me when I say I've been screaming about this ad nauseum, but it is what it is. I'm hoping
it doesn't help when DJ LeMahieu has the season
right.
he's having. I feel like over the last couple of years, you guys have been such a poor contact team, yet he still hit up in the 320s and was still an extremely productive offensive contact player, putting the ball in play.
Yeah.
And now with him not doing it, it's unfortunate. But you guys added guys like Rudin Odor. I was like, how's he going to fix your issues? You guys need someone like I don't know how many Pittsburgh Pirates games you've been watching this year. But Adam Frazier.
Oh, he would be great. I know who you're talking about with him.
Yeah. Every single year I say this going to the deadline. Yankees should add Whit Merrifield. Yankees should add Eric Sogard. Yankees should add Adam Frazier. I feel like you guys could really – Tommy LaStella. There's a lot of different guys that I feel like every single offseason get traded that I feel like would be perfect for the Yankees, but you guys never get them.
Right. No, I agree.
But the good thing about the Yankees, well, for you at least, is your pitching's been better than I thought it'd be. Like Taillon's had some good games. Kluber obviously had the no-hitter, but he's dealing with an injury. Herman has his past, whether you like him or not. He's been good on the mound. And then Cole obviously has been an ace. I feel like that's going into the deadline, knowing that at least you have those pitchers pitching well when they're healthy is a very good thing to know. Montgomery, too.
I'm glad you mentioned Whit Merrifield, too, because that's another guy who I think is criminally underrated. No one really talks about how productive he is. He's not a home run hitter, but he's someone who
steals a ton of bases.
He slaps the ball. Yeah, steals a ton of bases. He is a great fundamentally sound player, and I really think the Yankees could use somebody like him.